right, nice job. Good set. Let's do some social kick.
Life in Vermont, though. So what was the shift to Vermont?
Love. Has to be love.
It absolutely was. Yeah, my husband
Has to be.
husband's a Vermonter, and I moved to Vermont 21 years ago.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's actually gone pretty quickly, but I grew up in New Zealand. I grew up by the beach, and when I was 5, our local town built a 50-meter outdoor pool right by the beach, which was a super treat for me, because before school at 5, I used to run down to the pool and just go hang out and play before classes. So yeah, that was sort of my background. So when I moved to Vermont, it was a bit of a shock, actually, because there was no ocean and I was now land-based, and it was pretty horrifying. And lucky for me, the local town I live in built a 25-meter, 8-lane community pool the year after I moved here, which was a savior.
Wow. Should probably save some.
So wait, you are landlocked, but you are one of the world's best open water swimmers.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
You don't want to get into like running, skiing, or anything. You're like, I'm just gonna do something.
Yeah, I live in a ski and riding town. It's pretty wild, actually.
That's right.
But what was fortunate for me is Vermont's got some really incredible lakes, and like an hour and a quarter away is a 25-mile lake that spans from Vermont into Canada, and then about 25 minutes away I've got a reservoir, 19 miles of shoreline, and this is the beautiful thing: no motorized boats, so you can go out there with a swimmer float and just not have that fear of being hit by anything motorized, which is amazing.
Yeah, I went to school in Montreal, so there's a lake that goes between the two, Quebec and Vermont, I think.
Lake Nymphamagog.
Nymphamagog, okay, that's right. I've been in that lake. It's awesome. Yeah.
It is a great lake. Now, the only challenge with the lakes in Vermont is they freeze.
But that's not a problem to you. I heard about you on cold water. What's that cold water? Tell us about that.
Well, I learned how to adapt to the cold water, essentially. And it's it's the survival deal. Is I love the open water, and it gets cold out here, and I would just keep swimming until things freezed over. And over time, I got actually cunning at it, because I'm a leaner frame, and the only way I can survive is to swim quite as fast as I can in the cold water. So I decided it was a good idea to train for an ice mile. And that is 1 mile in 41 degrees or less. Yeah.
And no wetsuit, just regular lycra.
No, you have a cap, goggles, and earplugs, and so
earplugs. What a pansy. Earplugs.
No, right. But, they do help. They do actually keep some of the cold water out.
Yeah, we know. And 56 degrees. Not
like Tahoe. We think that's plenty cold.
Yeah, well, mate, it was freezing. I mean, people say to you, what's it like? And it's quite hard explaining to someone what it is like in water that cold. It burns your thighs and your abdomen like you were being hit with a hot iron. So, so for a lot of people say, well, why? And it's, because I think I can do it. I'm going to give it a crack. And fortunately, it worked out. And at the time, it was not now, but was one of the fastest female times in the world when I did that. But
what did you do?
25, just over 25 minutes.
Wow. 5 minutes in 41 degree water.
Yeah. And the trick is not slowing down, because slowly the cold's just taking your function and your strength away. And
I feel like that's the trick for all swimming events, is just don't slow down. But that's really hard to do.
The challenge for me was the local news team were at the finish, and I don't know if you've ever had hypothermia, but it's not the greatest thing to have in an interview.
No, I haven't. I have Raynaud's, the kind of condition of the blood rushing away from your extremities. So I have a tough time even in the ocean in Santa Cruz in California. So I don't know how you swim in 41 degree water.
Yeah, it's actually, well, here's the deal. It's pretty unpleasant getting in. and it gets more painful as you're swimming. But the worst part is getting out. You've got about a minute and a half before, well, we call it after drop, where once your working muscles aren't pumping that blood around your body and everything stops and that cool blood pulls back to your core, you just, your temperature plummets. So to try and get dressed in those couple of minutes, that's difficult. And then it's the warm-up that's actually the most painful thing. So doesn't it sound like a good time? You wish you were doing it, right?
Yeah,
but people do it. Wim Hof, you mentioned earlier, you know?
Yeah, there are people that, will train and do ice adaptations and claim a lot of health benefits with it. How did you start training for that? Was it just swimming in the water around you, or were you doing some sort of adaptations with ice baths and things like that?
She was desperate. She's in Vermont. She's open water swimmer. She was like,
I don't care what I have to do.
Well, the
New Zealand wine to get her in there, probably.
I'll tell you, I can cool the pool down. No, the main reason really was because the marathon swims are so long. It was really to help me build up a cold tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And although I wasn't really intending to go out and be an ice swimmer, it was really because the season in Vermont, the swimming open water season, was so short. And to answer your question, so I started with very short bursts of cold, 5 to 10 minutes, and then built it up over time. And you were talking about your 22-second 50. It's a shame when it takes you swim shorter than your 20-minute drive to get to the lake to do it. And so I would just try and push it and swim longer and longer, and eventually my body would sustain longer times there, and it would recover faster. And it is actually quite funnily enough, it does actually feel quite good after you're done. But I don't know that I do it for the health benefits. It's really more for a performance thing for my swimming.
You don't do it alone though, Charlotte, right? You do it with someone next to you spotting you to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, and certainly very close to the shore so I can exit easily. I'll have someone else with me, and ideally someone else watching as well. And so when I did my ice mile, I had a medical professional there on hand, a boat, kayak support, people, watching how I'm moving. And so in cold water, if hypothermia is starting to get to you, you lose some of your function. And one of the key things is your stroke rate will drop. So for me, I normally swim 64 strokes a minute. So if I get into the 40s or low 50s, something's going wrong. The other thing is swimming away from the boat or in the wrong direction, not following instructions. So there are ways that people can monitor you for safety. And so, a lot of people start with cold showers. I did that, and it really sucks. I'd rather just get in and take the plunge. and the ice bath can't do, that's not my deal either. If I'm going to be in the cold, I'm going to be moving.
Gotta move.
Kiwis are tough, man. I mean, that world toughest race, the Kiwis are the ones who are moving it and winning that race. I mean, I had a Kiwi coach.
Nuts. I'm curious what I don't know, maybe I'm sure there's world records on all this, but like what's the coldest you can swim in and for how long?
They've gone in the Arctic and they swim in the Arctic all the time. It happens all the time.
41 seems crazy, let alone I'm sure you can go even colder though.
Oh, they'll do colder than that.
Yeah,
definitely. Like we'll swim in the snow and stuff up here. It's pretty fun for optics, but it actually feels a wee bit warmer when it's the water's actually warmer than the air. But no, it's some pretty crazy stuff. And I got to tell you, there's not a whole lot of people in Vermont that do it.
I was about to ask because we were in Trinidad and there was a big open water community and we all swam and there was more people than I think Brian and I expected out there. So I was wondering how many people are doing these Vermont open water swims in the winter.
For example, there's an winter swim open water society, and there's upwards of like 80 to 100 people will come in a March event. They will cut a 2-lane pool in Lake Magog in the ice, and they will race 25s, 50s, all strokes. Not bad. Yeah, no,
went off the ice.
People are into it.
One thing. First of all,
that's true.
We trained in 81 degree water. When I got to Trinidad, it was like 90 degree water. But I thought that 78 was cold because that's the international temperature. So the Olympic pools, like it
has to be 78.
World Champs pools are all 78. So I'm just imagining what a almost 40 degree difference is. That's so
Yeah, it's huge. But it's all adaptation though. I mean, people will come up and open water swim in Vermont from Florida. In the middle of our summer, we might be 70, 72 degrees. And, I used to be just gobsmacked that they would come up and go, oh my God, it's so cold. Well, then I went and raced an alligator lighthouse swim race down in Florida, and it was in the low to mid 80s. The heat was really difficult.
Yeah, totally.
It's all relative.
Yeah, I enjoy Tahoe at 58, and I enjoy that cold water. I feel my engine is as cold, and you want to keep going and going and going. It's great. But Charlotte, so I have the same reaction now to the ice swim as I did a few months ago with Kat Breed when she was talking about her shark swims, and there's no way I'm doing a shark swim.
Oh boy, yeah, sharks.
And I got a question for you. Hang tight.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, would you rather swim in 41-degree water or in sharky water?
Oh, the cold for sure.
41 for sure.
She's done both. And what
Yeah.
happened in your Catalina swim?
Well,
That was just insane. Sorry.
yeah, that was bonkers. Yeah, actually, I've actually asked sometimes at the pool. I'll say to people, "Okay, would you rather do a 10K swim in pool water, or would you rather go 200 meters in 40 degrees?" I always love to see their answers. But back to your question about the shark. So Catalina, 2013. I was signed up for a marathon swim from Catalina Island to the California coast. Super excited, motored over in the boat. It's a midnight start, and we got over there a wee bit early at 11 p.m. And when you're swimming at night, you have a light on the back of your goggle strap and on the tied to your suit, and it's from island to shore. So I had a 45 foot support boat. It was time to slide off, and I said to the crew and the captain, how do I know where I'm going to land on Catalina Island to start my swim? And they're like, well, we'll shine a spotlight. And just as they're sliding off the boat, they said, make sure, watch out for the sharp rocks so you don't get cut on the way in. So in I swim, super dark night, and slide under this buoy line, ready to climb up into the shore. And sure enough, I just sliced my knee open. I could feel myself just, wrench on the top of my knee, and I'm like, oh, that can't be good. So get myself out, and I stand. Before you start your swim, you got to signal you're ready to go. So I put my arms up, get into the water, and I'm off. And I'm really excited. I've been training for about a year for this, and in marathon swims for me, I'll swim the first hour without stopping, and then I will get a fuel or a feed from the boat. So it was about, probably about 30 to 40 minutes into my swim, and we had some pretty good sized swells, not out of control, but enough that I would get picked up and moved away from the boat and then back and close. And I just felt something hit my hip like a freight train. And the only way I can describe it is like someone taking a big plank of wood with nails in and smacking me on my side, and it just jolted my body across. And in all reality, I went, what the F? And of course, when I wrote about it, I was, oh my, what was that? But
Yeah.
And I kept swimming, and your mind tries to make sense of things that you can identify as. So I'm like, well, okay, it could have been a big fallen tree, and I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm in a couple of 100 foot of water, and then I'm like, well, I must have hit the boat. And meanwhile, it's throbbing like I've been hit with a baseball bat. And I look up to sight for the boat, and the boat had been picked up and moved away to my left. And then I decided that it must have been a mutant jellyfish that had upside down and stuck.
Absolutely.
And so I kept on swimming, and when I came into the boat for my first feed, and at that time the kayak support I had actually flipped, so I was more concerned that they were okay, and I kind of swam around the boat till I got the kayak back on the boat and then headed off. And so I swam for another 11 hours and just really worked on focusing what didn't hurt in my body. And at that point, it was pretty much my earlobes and my hair. And I ended up just a little over a mile from the Californian coast, and my speed slowed down and hypothermia crept in, and I was pulled into the boat. And after a marathon, after you've been putting everything out there, just everything aches. So we'd packed up, my two crew members and I had packed up all our gear, and I was sitting in the back of the car, and we were driving back to the beach house when we were staying, and I couldn't get comfortable in the car. I'm like, oh, my hip aches, everything hurts, and my sweatpants kind of slid down, and I looked, and I'm like, hey guys, I think I've got some puncture holes in my side. And they're like, you're out of it. We've been up for 30 whatever hours. Just sit back and, we've heard enough from you. And then I'm like, no, seriously, I think there's something sticking out of one of them. And so it went, and I pulled out this little kind of tooth fragment out of my hip. And they looked around at me, and we all just burst out laughing. And I got back to the beach house, and they cracked a few beers, and I went to shower off, and I came out with a towel wrapped around, and I said, God, does this look like a mouth mark to you? And there was just this sort of half moon shape on it was like bruising little puncture marks. And we kind of laughed it off, actually. I didn't really think that much about it. Then, the next day it sunk in a wee bit more. The size of the mouth mark, we went sort of to the Manhattan Pier Marina and showed the marine biologist the tooth and the mark on my hip, and she'd estimated about a 5 to 6 foot fish, and it was when I kind of heard it was the size of me that I thought, well, that was pretty rude of him to like bite and leave. But
I know, like, what a date. No.
We didn't even exchange numbers.
I know, it's nothing. Were you wearing a wetsuit?
No wetsuit, no.
No wetsuit, of course. But what?
Yeah, no. So I figure the shark was probably pretty embarrassed, because he went in for a bite, lost his tooth, probably went down to his wee shark buds, and they were giving him a hard time, and he was like, oh my God, she was made out of titanium. Seriously.
She kept going.
You don't want to go there.
Phaser.
The last one we got down.
She thought I was a mutant jellyfish. Jeez.
Last time you gash your leg and leave a blood trail on an open one.
Yeah, but I think probably, luckily for me, I didn't know anything was coming. It was pitch black, couldn't see it. All I did was feel the impact. I didn't really let my mind go there at the time. I think what was more challenging is because I DNF'd the swim, being stubborn, I signed up again in 2014 and went back and was out on the same boat, and it was sitting on that boat. Like it's they tell me it's time to swim into the island, and I'm sitting on the side of the boat, and I can hear the captain and the crew going, oh, I don't think she's getting in. And I just needed like 2 or 3 minutes to get my head around that I was going back in the same water. But I got to tell you, I swam the first hour pretty fast. Obviously the big fish wouldn't be in the same spot, but I'm like, I'm getting the hell away from that island. And I landed the swim in 10.5 hours, so it worked out pretty good. But
yeah, I must say, because Brian he did a swim about a month ago now, probably at least. And there was a great white in the swim next to him, right here in Santa Cruz. He and Cat Breed. Well, he had exited about a half an hour before the shark showed up. But Cat got back in the water and swam a week later. And because you have to, right? You just have to get back in.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I've gotten back in and swam, and you can't let it mess with you. It's still. I have a lot of my friends, both of you included. Whenever we go swim in the ocean, you typically answer as sharks and won't go. And the thing is, for sure, there's a risk. Like there's a risk for a lot of things, just like there's a risk in hypothermia or swimming in super cold water. But we all take risks, and so it just so happens that there's a thrill that comes from doing athletic adventures or things that you feel like are developing yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so I feel like that's what a lot of us gain from these types of experiences. So I'm not going to let that kind of thing stop me.
Okay.
That might be ludicrous. Like, you don't jump out of a plane without a parachute, at least most people. So maybe some might think that that's sort of akin to swimming with sharks, but I don't know. It's like you've gone on how many swims and never encountered a shark. So you do once, but that doesn't outweigh all of the other swims and great experiences you've had.
Well, yeah, and they're everything's out there. It's all out there. It's just, look for me. I mean, I didn't see anything, and I normally don't see anything out. And this thing bumped into me, and I was lucky that it hit me on the hip, and didn't get a fleshy part, and it went off and did its thing, and I did too. But I got to tell you a funny one, because
That wasn't very funny.
I had a bear. I got
people like, oh my God.
laugh.
Yeah. People are like, you're such a badass. Well, you wouldn't think so when you heard this story. So the next summer, I'm doing a little bit of training down in Rhode Island. I really like swimming down there. I haven't been down for a few years, but I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm out there, and I'm swimming. I mean, it's amazing what you run into in the ocean. So I'm swimming along, and unbeknownst to me, I got my safe swimmer float tangled on something, some rubbish out in the ocean. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my float had hooked onto a Mickey Mouse balloon, and it was a round balloon, like the ones grocery store kind of deal, and it was black. It had a black Mickey Mouse on it, and I'm swimming along, and I'm like, I'm not going to let the shark thing mess with, where I'm at, what I'm doing. I'm going to live my life, get into it, and give things a crack. So I'm swimming along, and I normally work pretty hard to breathe to the side. Sometimes it's wavy. I tuck my head a little bit, and I look back, and I'm like, holy crap, I see it. I can see a black shape. I'm like, crap, Finn, what? Hey, what? And I'm not going to stop, not putting my feet down. I'm just going to do my thing. And the whole way, I think this thing's trailing me. At the end of the, like a mile down the beach, I turn around, I see this balloon.
Mickey Mouse.
And I'm like, well, I'm not so tough now, right? Because it just freaked me out. And then because I hate seeing rubbish and trash in the ocean, so I dragged the whole thing back to the shore with me. Oh God, it made me laugh though. So,
you see, there's sharks and there's sharks in New Zealand, in California. They're sharks you get scared of. In the Caribbean, we have lots of sharks, but I see sharks when I'm surfing all the time. I remember a story, me spearfishing, and when you spearfish, you push the spear through the fish and you let it run through on the line. And that line has to be like 20 feet, 30 feet long. And you keep fishing and you let it line. And I remember coming in the shore and I had caught like 5 fish. I pull in, I'm like, where are the fish? All the fish are gone. Because you had a bunch of little black tips and stuff. I mean, they're dangerous, but to me, great whites just have a different sort of, one little nibble is a leg. But moving on from that year, around that time, you were the world's, you were told you were the world's best open water swimmer. Why? What is it about that period in your swimming, in your career, that you were just like hauling ass in open water swimming? That was like 14, 13, around then?
Yeah. I think it's about the adventure. I think it's about, there's a couple of things. I've swum 61 marathons. They range from 10K up to my longest I just did a couple of weeks ago was 32 miles.
See, that's like a marathon is meant to be a set distance. These guys go 32 miles.
I know, right? And like the wilder the water, the crazier the setting, the more I enjoy it. And out of those marathons, I've had some DNFs, and I think part of that the world recognition is getting up and dusting yourself off after a DNF and not completing a swim, and going and giving it another go. Relooking at your training, reevaluating, and going in and being able to either go at that same swim or go for an even harder one. So I think it's really part of having a tolerance for failure and taking it with grace. And then the other part is, I think, and I think this should come naturally, but it's not even inspiring, but mentoring and helping others maybe realize their dreams of open water as well. So, although it's a solo sport, it's really not. It's about bringing on others to enjoy the sport long after I stop doing marathons too. So I think that's it. I think it's the going into waters that might have sharks in it, or swims that haven't been done before. I've done a few swims that have been world first course swim.
Like what? What was your favorite swim that you did? I mean, I know you did Manhattan. That's been done. What's a swim that you like? Oh, this was my swim. That was the thing I'm most proud of when I'm 18.
Okay, well, this swim was Skinner Island. It's an 18-mile swim, and it went from Newport, Vermont, up to an island in Quebec called Skinner Island. And the most thing I like about this swim is A, it hadn't been done, and B, is the history about it. This little island has a hidden cave in it. And back in the late 1800s, during Prohibition, there was a fellow called Uriah Skinner who used to sneak up to Magog, Canada in a rowboat and bring back candy and lace and silverware for the USA farmers and their wives. And the customs officials have been trying to catch him for years. And one night where there wasn't a whole lot of waves, they trailed him up there in the pitch of the night and chased him into this island. And it had a lot of heavy overgrowth on the island, and the cave was hidden. And he tied his boat off and got all his wares and hid in the cave. And the officers looked most of the night to try and find him. They couldn't find him, but they found his boat. And this guy was a really big guy, bigger than usually would be at that time. And the captain, someone came and said, "Oh, we found his boat." And they were like, "He can bloody rot there in hell, and we're taking his boat." And they took his boat. Well, years later, that there was a resort built up the lake, and in a big storm, a fisherman from this well-to-do resort took refuge on this island and hid in the cave, and he found the bones in the back. And this guy I read about this story, and I'm like, I need to go and find this island and see if this cave is there. So I did kind of a fact-finding mission in a boat, found the cave. No bones in the back. But so I decided, bloody hell, I'm going to swim to the island. This guy couldn't swim. The island wasn't that far from shore. So I started Newport, swam across the border to Canada, which is kind of cool because you got to get immigration clearance.
I was going to ask, is there a guy in the water who checks your passport?
Yeah. Right. And we get pre-approved. And so landed on the island, sat in the back of the cave, and the cave was all phosphorescent, super cool photos of all this bright lights in the cave, and then swam back to Newport. And it was a really neat swim, just really from the history of it. Yeah, very, very cool. And I figured, we'll get Uriah with us. So I figured I'd ordered a little skeleton. He came on the boat. And of course, not that we would do this while we're drinking, but, there was a bottle of brandy because that's what he had in the boat. It was a pirate swim. So that was a pretty big one. And then just a couple
I love that.
Yeah. And so this wasn't a 2013-14 swim, but a couple of weeks ago, I became the fastest male or female ever to cross Lake George. Wow. Yeah, pretty wild. So, I think I've had a 10, 11-year sort of career in the marathon swimming, and I've been lucky enough to be named to the 50 most adventurous woman since 2014 to 2019. So yeah, just sort of keep trucking along, really.
But and now you're coaching, right? What swims do you see people doing that you really are, I guess jealous about, but is proud they've done it? Is it Diana's crossing to Cuba? Is it Cam Bellamy from Barbados, St. Lucia? Is it, what are some of those swims like, oh, that's cool, I wish I could do that, or you're so proud to see those done?
No, well, some of both. Sarah Thomas's four-way crossing of the English Channel was just incredible. Be in that, to be in that temperature water that long, and that was a remarkable feat. And it's interesting because some of the warmer swims are really challenging too, with the jellies and stuff in there as well. So. The North Channel is very, very difficult one. And I think what's cool is there's a lot of people are exploring a lot more than they used to. And you mentioned Manhattan, really iconic swim. I thought that swim was incredible. And it's a popular swim. And I think people are starting to look to set new courses out now. And I really admire the people that are putting down groundbreaking swims on things that haven't been done before.
What do you think about, Brynn, this weekend? We have a friend who's going to be doing 25 miles. Talk about what that swim, and because you've done 25-mile swims, how would you prepare for a swim like that? Talk about what Kat's doing this weekend.
Yeah, so she's swimming across Monterey Bay in California, so from Santa Cruz south to Monterey. And so the concerns for that race are water temp, sharks, and jellies. So and I think, I don't know if that's the longest that she's done the North Channel, and then she's got the fastest swim from the north end of Lake Tahoe to the south. So she's done a few, not nearly as many as you have, but it's interesting to be somewhat close to someone who's doing open water swimming at a pretty elite level, a very elite level. She's taken me out on some ocean swims, and she hauls ass for sure. So it's no joke. And I'm getting used to swimming without a wetsuit as well, which is coming out of my comfort zone. So yeah, what do you think about what do you think about when you go into a new swim and a new endeavor?
Well, first of all, doing the North Channel is just that's beast mode. That's awesome that she's done that. So at 25, it's interesting, particularly when things are current assisted. For me, I want to make sure that my feeds are really fast. So that cuts down your time a lot. Preparation-wise, my base swimming week is 40,000 meters a week. When I'm getting ready for a marathon, I come up to about 60,000 meters a week. And as I get closer to it, I'm really working on holding a steady, consistent pace and being able to do some speed work, because you just don't know when you've got to fight currents or push hard into the waves. I do a combination of pool swimming and open water. I really find the pace clock environment of the pool really helpful for accountability on speed. And I actually do not a ton of, but I do pretty frequently pull with a parachute because it really helps me in the waves as well. Going into a 25-mile ocean swim, I want to make sure I'm well greased up with Vaseline so I don't chafe. I've got a comfortable, not brand new suit on. I've made this mistake of wearing a brand new suit out of the bag and being at a bit of pain in that, and good sun lotion. In the ocean, for me, anytime I've got a motor to a start in a boat, I want to make sure I'm sitting up on the pool deck and watching the horizon. I don't get seasickness. I've had it once, but I'll try not to go down below and be tossed around by the waves before my start. And then, boy, one thing about anything for us, all of us, when we swim, you don't get the first half of your swim back. So if you're going to start lollygagging, you can't go back and make up that time. I want to get out and get a really strong pace going from the start. I don't want to play catch up later. And I don't know what your bud's like, but I'm quite keen on hearing I'm doing well out there. Someone yells at me and tells me I'm sucking. I tend to not perform quite as well. So I think the big things in the ocean are keeping well hydrated and having fast feeds. So I try and avoid chatting with the boat and the crew too long. A, so I don't get cold, and B, so I'm not burning up the clock.
What are you feeding on? What are you
I've fed on a lot of different things over the past years. Right now I'm having quite a lot of success with Hammer, Perpetuum. It's an endurance fuel. And I do quite like the gels. I don't like them in salt water. Salt water changes the taste of everything. I actually had my favorite feed in the 32 miler a couple of weeks ago was mashed potatoes. Random. I don't normally use that, but it was a cold night, and the girls threw the plastic bags of mashed potatoes down their cleavage, and it warmed it up. And it's I was like, and then for me, fresh water, I've ended up in the ICU a couple of times after swims from hyponatremia, troponin levels in the blood. It's, your body's put under severe stress. So my last lake swim, I really hammered on the electrolytes, and towards the end of the swim, I was actually taking in some Cape Cod chips too.
Hey, do you think there's any long-term detriment to your body or as a result of the volume of swims that you've done?
I think if you don't rest yourself adequately afterwards and give yourself a season break, potentially there is. Knock on wood, I've never had any shoulder injuries or problems. And I think the thing for me that I work really hard on is having a good dry land training program. And I don't lift necessarily heavy weights, but I really work on balancing the front and back side of my body and working in all three planes of motion. I think we can get pretty stuck in one plane. So I do try and get some rotation and some lateral movements in there. And I'm pretty regimented on rotator cuff strengthening as well.
So what type of, when you are training, like you said, for one of those longer marathon races, you're maybe doing 60K, how much dry land is involved during that time as well? Is it, a couple hours a week or just 10 minutes of prevention before swims? How does that all fit into that equation?
That's a good question. I'll do 3 hours of strength and mobility work. Mm-hmm. And some of it is on static equipment, and others will be using medicine balls, slam balls, bands, foam roller. And then I don't do as well as I would like to on the flexibility. I'm probably about an hour and a quarter flexibility. And that's pretty key, because that front side of your body, those hip flexors, that whole chain shortens up. And so I have to work pretty hard at keeping that lengthened out. And that's that and electrolytes has really helped me curb. I used to get a lot of cramping. My first 25 miler, I swear to God, half of that was just hellish hip cramps. And when I came into feed, I would just come into that, just try and release that off and just swim with the pain of it. But I just don't have that now. And so I would work on that, and then about 2 weeks out from my marathon, I'll cut my weights by 2/3 and drop down to 2 sets of 12 and just do light joint movement just to keep things flowing. And it seems to work pretty well for me. I just have to listen to my body. And I think, to answer your question, it's you do get banged up, and it's just, you got to rest it up and be kind to your body afterwards. And then I have to understand that I'm rebuilding after that. I'm not getting back in the pool 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later and expecting to have my pace and my volume where it is. I got to build back up very, very slowly. And that's fun. I like to build up.
John, I was going to say, it's 60K a week is not much. I did 60K a week and I swam a 50 and 100 free. I mean, is it not surprising to you that only 60K?
Yeah.
What kind of swims were you doing in the 60K? You say there are a lot of pace times. What's a typical workout you do when you're like trying to put your 60K in?
Okay, so I definitely have lighter days. So I'll go, 3K in a pool on a Monday. Tuesday, I'll do a double swim. I might do an 8K in the pool and a 5K outside. Wednesday, I'll go light in the pool again. And then on Thursday, I'll do a 10 or a 12K open water. Rest on a Friday. And then on a Saturday is that's my big hog day. And I'll go, in the peak of my season, I'll go 4 to 5 hours. And yeah,
we did like 10 5Ks. You did like bub, and then boom.
Yeah, she's doing the long chunks. Yeah,
that's a difference.
But I don't know. John can't swim 600 without some music. So what does it take to swim 5 hours?
And then that would be good quality. And then a Sunday would be like a 5K recovery stretch out kind of thing. That last 32, every swim's different, but it seemed to work really good. I actually the next day really didn't have a tweak, and I had to be quite careful with myself because I felt so good not to let myself go out and be like, oh, I feel great. I still had to go through that rest cycle, which is, you enjoy that. That opens, quite a bit of time. If you've been doing some heavy training, you come off a marathon, you get to put your feet up and get some other stuff done. It's fun.
Definitely. I mean, most of the training and what you're using, it seems relatively low tech. And I know Luke has some goggles recently that shows your heart rate, shows your pace within the lens and things like that. Do you use anything like that or a smartwatch to track your paces and things like that? And if not, are there any things that you think would be helpful for open water training?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did so many years without using tools like that. I got really good on internal pace control.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I really love that, having that feel of where I'm at. And when I have a kayak support or a boat by me, within a half-hour period, every 20 minutes, I will have them. They'll count my strokes, and they'll give me a hand signal so I know where my stroke count is. And I did get a Garmin swim watch, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I love looking at the stats off that. It's I find the resting heart rate very useful. I like the sleep on it. I like to look at the pace. I haven't tried the ones in the goggle eye. I've got a swim bud who really enjoys it, and I think I'd enjoy that as well. So I think feedback is good, and having it real time is really helpful. You're not in to have a certified marathon swim, you're not permitted to wear a watch.
Yeah.
Can't have any tools like that. So I've kind of trained old school to be able to do that, but I have to tell you, I'm enjoying this summer. I've enjoyed using the data and seeing it while I'm training. You can't cheat on it either. If you're, laid out if you laid out a 5K, you look at your watch, I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to be thinking on going here.
What about community? So you mentioned having some swim buds, and open water swimming can be a pretty solo type of endeavor. Do you find yourself meeting up with different friends to go and do a workout, or is a lot of it, solo and out on your own?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. When I started training in Vermont, there was no one, and I was doing some longer swims, certainly in the pool, and people sort of started wanting to swim a little bit of the time with me. And essentially, I don't know if you'd say I did it, but, we just kind of grew a little pod, which was great because I had some company, and they've, quite a few of them have gone on to do some Triple Crown and big swims, which has been fun. And we've got a Northeast Kingdom open water society up here, and it's run by Kingdom Games, and they bring a couple of hundred people to Vermont to open water swim each summer. So we have a lot of people visiting from other states, which is really good, and we're getting some younger generations, some teenagers coming up. There's a 16-year-old just swam the English Channel that started swimming up here at the age of 11 for a 1 mile swim. So I'd have to say we're growing open water swimmers here, and it's just infectious. It's fun. It's relaxed, and people want to give it a crack. But I do this last summer. I've done quite a lot of swimming in the reservoir. There's no boats. I've done quite a few on my own there, and I've also had a lot with kayak support where people have been really kind to come up and paddle by me.
Charlotte, I was going to say, so you're 1,500 meter record holder for USMS. You coach water swimming. We know pool swimming primarily. We swam pool all year long, but one time, there's one race a year, and all of them swam for that open water race. And you're like, okay, the month before, we don't do flip turns, or we do a lot more kicking, or we always try to figure out how to swim open water in the pool. This Italian guy, he's the Olympic champion in the mile. He just destroyed a 10K after almost breaking the world record in the mile in the pool, a week before. talk to me, and all of us, what kind of stroke do you have in the pool? What kind of stroke do you keep in open water? You know, do you do a sung yang, 2 beat? Do you just like knock your legs nonstop? You talk about, and you're pretty high stroke count you go in the water, in open water. Let's talk about pool and open water differences, and how do you swim differently? How can kids train in the pool and then go do open water swim? You don't have to have a big body of water if you have a 50-meter pool. I don't know. Let's talk about that. I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think let's talk about kicking. I think people are starting to utilize their kick a lot more in open water, whereas in the past it was a little bit of a lazier.
Yeah, it's a rudder.
Yeah, which is probably a wee bit more what mine is like, unless I'm being chased by Mickey Mouse. then it's a little bit more rapid. And look, I think for kids and for younger, I think it's starting to get their head around that. You know, there are things longer than a 50 and 100 and a 200. And I certainly know that when I started coaching our masters group here in Stowe, they were pretty horrified when I put something up longer than 100, and now it's not unusual for us to be swimming 800s, 500s, thousands, and repeats on that. I think part of it's just getting your head around that you can keep going and have a consistent pace. I actually am a big proponent of the walls and turns. I think they have value indoors and outdoors. I'm really not into people being saying I'm an open water swimmer and that's an excuse to have sloppy turns. I think the walls are a good opportunity to be powerful and hold a tight streamline and utilize really pulling in tight in core. And I think it's a lot about discipline too. Multiple people in a lane, not that we can do it with COVID, but any sort of jostly water that you can imitate in the pool is good. I've done things like move the lane lines and have people swim in rectangles, all different things that you can, definitely do in the pool too. And I think the sighting is very helpful. It's, one of the
that's huge
downs for people is they get out from the pool, and it's not a matter of yes, it's how fast you can swim, but if you're not swimming straight, that's not crap. You know what I mean? Going fast off towards the shore is not helpful when the Finnish boy's in the opposite direction. So
the sighting is really difficult, especially the line you take. Do you go out and plot a course before? I mean, do you go and test the course before you do it? Do you go and do you practice and figure out what your lines are if you're near land, obviously?
Yeah, well, actually, further than that, the key is to figure out what you're going to sight on. Doesn't matter what the line is. You've got to decide what it is, and I think it's teaching people what's identifiable from the water. It's very different standing on the beach to being head level. It's a completely different change. So I'll go for big tree or red roof or something really large. And I've got a pretty bright jacket, and I've been known to plant that on the shore as well. It's amazing how those things will stand out. So I think along with getting ready in the pool, it's transitioning and letting people know you got to think about what's under your foot when you're going into the water when you're getting in, and what's it going to be like when you get out. Is another one that is good for people to think about is, does it drop off quick, or are you going to have to wait out for a long time? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've seen people start races and not realize that it's knee deep for 50 meters out there, and they're diving in and swimming, and you're just not getting anywhere. So there's surveying what the entry and exit looks like, what your landmarks are going to look like, and then on the sighting, I think another common problem can be certainly in the waves when people are breathing when they're sighting is a difficulty. So if they're coming up to take their breath and they've got the hull of the Titanic facing forwards, it's it's not going to end well. And then the other important thing I think is you don't always necessarily want to follow the pack. I've certainly been in situations when the whole lead pack's gone the wrong way. So you can't just sit there and feel pretty comfy on, close to someone else's hip, happily not sighting, and let them do the work, because they might be just completely leading you.
Totally.
I've made that mistake, and then I've had to just abort the route that they were going and say, I got this, I'm going.
Which is why I like Tahoe. Tahoe, we follow boats. So Colin Pipes is a friend of yours. Like she's one who,
She's brilliant.
Yeah, she's awesome. We really enjoyed her show, and I know she has an endless pool, and she does a lot of work on an endless pool. What do you think about endless pools? Have you had a chance to try it with the application for training for open water swimming?
I've tried her endless pool and I loved it. I went. She was so great. I went out and swam with her, I think in 2011. First of all, love where she lives. Brilliant swimming, clear water. The endless pool, I think they're great. I've seen, they've come out with a nice remote control that you can set pace on and have it change. I mean, what an incredible tool. You don't have to think about it. You just adjust. And for open water, you're not told when the current's shifting or when things are changing. So when you can plant those and have to have your brain be okay with it, I think it's a really good tool. I've started working with someone who has an endless pool, and I can see it's going to be a really good training tool for him. And for a lot of times, travel, getting to the pool or the lake can be problematic with people's schedules. So being able to supplement some training, I think it's a good thing. I mean, for me, I'd rather swim in the pool, but I'm lucky I've got one half a mile away. But I'd be happy doing some training in an endless pool.
Yeah.
Well, you just need to pour about 6 bags of ice in the endless pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, way too warm for
At
you.
least 6. I mean, I was just gonna say, you mentioned kicking and the evolution of kicking in open water as an area to potentially improve. Luke was asking about stroke rates, and obviously a lot of open water swimmers have a higher stroke rate, just to keep going. What other advances do you think open water swimmers can make technically to get better?
I think they can. I think they can add in some dry land and strength work. I think some power. Like, what a difference for me, adding some explosive work into my training. Like, it's interesting when you race, all of us. I mean, like, your abs are kicking in. Like, I will be fatigued. And just preparing for that helps a lot. Like after my Lake George swim, probably the most thing I felt the most was I could feel my abs had really worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I think marathon swimmers, it's such a volume of training, and I think there's been for quite a few years a mindset of you just swim. But I think there's more involved in that. I think that conditioning the physical body and working on your mental focus is just as important.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's your mindset as well. I mean, how do you slug through another hour? How do you're working and the current has you stuck in the same spot even though you've been working for 3 hours? How do you get over those obstacles? How do you be a mile from the finish and have to get out and then and keep going? What do you do to keep yourself sane, literally?
I like having to get in the boat a mile from the finish. It's just it's devastating. You have to put in your mind that it's got value to it. The DNFs I've had, if I hadn't had them, I wouldn't have gone on to do other bigger and harder swims. And the focus. So the last swim I had was 17 hours and 58 minutes. And how I got down that is the people in the...
Sorry, 17 hours and 58 minutes.
Yeah, a little bit longer than your 22 seconds.
That's a smidge.
I swam that this year. This whole year I swam that.
You wouldn't be able to sit in your Adirondacks chair that long.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, it's very mindful stuff. I mean, it's almost yoga. You've got to get kind of internal. I really enjoy the outdoors. You get to see the moon all night and then the sun. I mean, how often do you sit up and watch that? It's pretty special.
You could be on a sailboat. having a cocktail.
I
But
know.
anyway, let's go on there.
Someone said to me once, "Can I just buy you a ferry ticket?" Seriously, Charlotte. So, but mentally, that's taxing to stay on task that long. And so, what I did in my last swim, a swimmer friend had a great idea of. She had some key words, and I actually put together a laminated sheet with one word. I had the crew read me every half hour, and it would be. I would hear that word and it would just keep me locked in for another 30 minutes. And for example, drive, another one was determination, destiny, robust. So some words like that I could hone into and just bring my mind back to the focus of what was going on. And then, there's probably about 8 hours of, are we there yet? You try and get that out of your head though.
So what's coming up next?
I've got a swim down. It's a 12-mile swim around Charleston in about 2.5 weeks. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And the week before that, I've got a short little sprint. It's a 3.2 mile, and it's in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's called Swim the Loop. It's got a lot of currents, and the fun thing about that is my daughter's got into open water swimming. She's 20, and we're gonna race that together. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, she trained with me all last summer. She got 3 10Ks in this last summer, and she's tough. So I'm looking forward to her kicking my ass. It'll be good.
I like that.
Hey, so one final thing. So as you're getting ready for a race like this, is there a keystone sort of swim set, whether in the pool or open water, that you look to and go, you come back to it?
I'm ready with that.
That's the thing, and that's the signal that you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's 10-400s.
All right. Tell us more. 10-400.
Yeah, keep going. I can do that tomorrow. Flippers.
What are they on, and what are you going?
10-400s, and I go on a 605 in meters, and so my goal will just be to go sub 6 and descend the last 3.
I love it. Wow, pretty touch and go too. That's awesome.
Yeah, man, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have those things. So, okay, so Charlotte, where can people keep up with you? Can we follow you on these races coming up?
Yeah, definitely. My Instagram is Brynn Swim, and I have a brynnswim.com website, and old-fashioned Facebook. And I'll have a tracker on my 12-mile swim. So people, if they want to, get up in the morning, have breakfast, go to lunch, they can, see what I'm doing at the start and maybe check in on me later on in the day. But yeah.
When's the last time you spoke to sprinters about your open water? It's a whole different world, but we both do this, so we're good.
Sometimes I jokingly.
Yeah, right. I told you, you guys are the smart ones. 22 seconds.
Well, sometimes I ask our guests
I swim hard. What's that?
Oh, sorry. Sometimes I ask some of our guests who's tougher, distance swimmers or sprinters, and I feel like you've made it pretty clear that distance swimmers are tougher.
Yeah, I mean it's all temporary discomfort, isn't it? And the thing is, when you're doing
the hardest reasons for me.
Yeah, when you're doing 18 hours, I mean, all joking aside, ideally you're losing time and you're not focusing on it. So that last 18-hour swim, it just went in a snap of the fingers, although it took a long time and it was pretty uncomfortable, but it just was amazing how fast it actually felt.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Yeah. But that means you love it, right? If you're doing something you love, it goes pretty quick and you can sustain anything that's not comfortable. So,
Big up.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys hanging out and chatting.
Yeah, well, the pleasure is all ours. We look forward to seeing what you do coming up, but it's always fun hanging out with inspiring people like you. So thanks a lot for hanging out with us, Charlotte, and everyone else. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Have a great day around here. Cheers.